Hello everybody and welcome back to Rokai's Raid Guides, where today we are going over the second boss in Terrace of Endless Springs, Tsulong, aka the Bipolar Dragon. This fight is a two-phase rotating fight every 2 minutes. Before we go into the mechanics, first of all, for the comp that you're going to want to bring for this, you can one tank it. I do recommend having two tanks. And then three healers is absolutely required for this fight. We'll talk more about the healing phase in just a moment specific to that, and then any mixture of DPS will work. So, for the boss mechanics, we'll start in this first phase, the night phase, also known as the damage phase. In this phase, you're going to be attacking the boss, and then there are a handful of mechanics to pay attention to. First is a mechanic called Dread Shadows. This is just a dot that goes on every player in the raid that does damage over time, stacking the longer that you have it on you. The only way to reset this debuff or to reset the dot is to stand in this glowing yellow beam that you see on the field right now. And if you look on the left hand side in like the center, you can see a weak aura that's tracking how many applications of this dot I have, currently 4, just up to 5. You're going to want to reset every so often to reduce the damage that you're tanking, because every stack increases the damage taken by 10%. So if you don't reset frequently, eventually the damage will get really out of hand and be difficult for the healers to manage. There is, however, a small asterisk to this. You can't just stand in the sunbeam. Every time that a player steps into it, it reduces, you can call it the available power left in that sunbeam, and would eventually cause it to go away. So the way you want to handle this is when you reach 5, 6, or 7 stacks of the debuff, very quickly just step into the beam and immediately step back out. If you have people just staying inside that beam, it will go away. Then you won't be able to reset your stacks anymore, and it will eventually just cause a wipe to raid damage. The next mechanic is called Nightmares, which a random player is picked will drop a pool underneath their feet. It's a giant purple swirly that will deal 300,000 damage to them and fear anybody within 8 yards of the impact. This is dodgeable. It has a few seconds activation, so you can get out of this prior to it going off. Just avoid this, and then healers, if someone does get hit, just quickly dispel the fear off. The next mechanic to talk about is specific only to the tanks, and I guess anybody who's out of position, but just like any other dragon boss in the history of WoW, Tsulong does a frontal called Shadow Breath. The tank will want to use a personal or have an external from a healer for this, and everybody else should just never be in front of the dragon, or you will die to this mechanic for sure. And then finally, this is the heroic only mechanic that has been added. You can see these waves of ads that are spawning from the outer edge of the room. These are called the Dark of Night. What will happen is they fixate on the beam of light's location. So the giant sunbeam that you see in the center of the screen now, these ads that spawn in waves are just going to fixate on that beam and slowly travel towards its location. If any of the ads reach the sunbeam, it deletes the beam and will completely remove it from the fight for the duration of the phase, which will instantly cause a wipe because that ticking damage will get out of hand really fast that we talked about earlier. Flowed, knocked back, other forms of soft CC all work on them. So for your DPS players, your priority during this phase is to kill the ads first. Once all the ads are dead, focus back on the boss, and then as soon as the ads spawn again, immediately switch targets and single target them down. We found the easiest way to handle this is just personal responsibility. If one is close to you, just immediately single target it down. Another solution could be assigning quadrants. If you'd like to, put some markers down on the room and then say, hey, you're responsible for triangle side or blue side, whatever it may be for you. Regardless, whatever is easiest for your raid group specifically to set up, do that. It's just the most important part of this phase specifically is making sure those ads die quickly. And again, soft CC does work, so slows and knockbacks, things like that are going to be really useful. You can see as an LA Shaman a couple of times here, I just stood in the sunbeam, and as things got close, I used Thunderstorm to knock them away. So just make sure none of these hit the sunbeam or it will be an instant wipe. And that covers everything that there is for the dark phase or the damage phase. And as we transition into the day phase, this is where the healers begin to shine. So starting with the things that are most relevant to your healers during this phase, the basics healers, you're actually going to be targeting Tsulong and healing him. During this phase, any healing done to the boss when he transitions back into the dark phase or the damage phase will equate to damage done. So, for example, if you heal him for 40% of his HP, when you transition into the dark phase, the boss will come out 40% lower than what you had him when you phased the boss. So, holding cooldowns, every single healing throughput cooldown you have here is extremely important. So, healers, please save everything that you have for this. Now, mechanics wise, the boss does a frontal similar to the damage phase. However, this is a good frontal. Maybe for the first time in all a while, the frontal you actually want to stand in, as it gives you a buff that restores 25% total mana and then also increases your healing done by 500% for 6 seconds. So you very much want to be standing in this healers to get that buff and pump giant heals into the boss. Now, the frontal still has a secondary benefit to everybody else. You of course will get the 25% total mana restored for casters, but secondly, the ads that are spawning in this phase actually get damaged by the frontal. So there are 3 types of ads during this specific day phase. The first, we'll just call them the normal or the fixate ads. You can see these are the ones that spawn on the outer edge and just run towards the boss. Similar to the ads in the damage phase, you just want to kill these before they reach the boss, and can also be CC'd. The second ad of the fight, we'll call it the big ad that you can now see on screen. This ad you'll want to bring directly in front of the boss so that he can be damaged by the frontal. But also, when you kill the large ad, it splits into several smaller ads. Now, this is the most annoying part of the day phase. As you can see, a bunch of these small ads are spawned. In this case, we lined it up very well, where they mostly get killed by that frontal. However, in that day phase, those mini ads that you can still see remaining on the screen right now, they spam cast a fear on random targets, so you want to make sure those die as fast as possible. My recommendation for handling that mechanic is during the day phase, kill the large ad just before that breath is going to go out from the boss, and then use the breath to kill those small ads, or you're just going to have tons of players getting constantly feared. It's going to be really horrible to deal with. So line up the boss timer with that sun breath so that the big ad dies, and very quickly afterwards the frontal takes care of the small ads that would end up fearing you. And jumping back a little bit in the fight for another healer specific mechanic. Now you can see there's a smaller beacon of light currently on the map as you transition into the day phase. It looks like that sunbeam from the first phase, but much smaller. This is a clickable or interactable beacon that gives another buff to the healers. So in addition to the frontal that restores mana and gives a 500% healing increase, this is called Light of Day, that when interacting with it, and it spawns at random locations in the room, by the way, but when interacting with it, it increases healing done by 1500% for 6 seconds. So some strategy for this specifically. We found that having the Holy Paladin pick up every single one of these, Pop Guardian, Wings, Holy Avenger, on-use trinkets, healing potion, everything that you could possibly think of, just bomb huge heals into the boss was by far the most effective use of this. Other great targets would be like a Holy Priest, or sometimes a Resto Shaman could be good if they have Ascendance and they just use greater heals. But basically, consider in your comp whoever is your largest single target healer that has the most possible throughput, and consider moving them around the room to each of these beacons that spawn and having them get that buff. Those two things combined, you can do the majority of the boss's health just in this one day phase. This is, aside from what it might look like, really just a healer fight. Make sure the healers stand in that frontal breath, assign one of the healers, or 2 if you really need to pick up those beacons for the 1500% healing increase, and just slam heals into the fight. And then another reminder, your DPS during this time, continuing to kill ads that fixate to the boss, make sure those ads don't reach him, and then killing the large and mini ads, in part using the frontal from the boss as well. The second thing to be a reminder for this ads during the day phase, the unstable Shaws, which are the medium-sized ads that spawn on the outer ring and then fixate towards the boss. If one of those reaches the boss, it will deal damage to him, which is a bad thing in that phase, because you're obviously trying to heal him up as he's a friendly in that moment. So any Shaws that reach the boss are actually going to make the fight last significantly longer and kind of reduce the effectiveness of the healing that you just did. So make sure those ads die prior to reaching the boss. And again, they could be slowed, CC'd, all the things like that. So DPS, that's your job during this phase. That covers all of the mechanics for Tsulong. Again, it's a two-phase rotating fight, but each phase is identical. Likely on your first time seeing this boss, you're going to get each damage phase or the dark phase twice, and you'll get each healing phase or the light phase twice. In our kill, we saw the light phase at the very last second, maybe the last 10-15 seconds of the fight. We were back in that healing phase for a second time. As you get more gear, of course, you'll rotate through this fight quickly. But again, the mechanics don't change. So once you have that damage phase completely memorized, you'll just repeat that 2 times, and same thing with the healing phase. So just a quick recap of everything to pay attention to. During the damage phase, DPS, you guys are prioritizing the small or medium adds that fixate on the beam of light. Everybody will be resetting their dot stacks using the sunbeam in the center of the room. And then tanks, there's a frontal to soak. Make sure you have an external or a cooldown ready for that. Final piece of that is the nightmare mechanic or the fear, the giant purple swirly that spawns that you need to get out of before it detonates, which does 300k damage and fears. If somebody messes up, not the end of the world. Healers, that fear can be dispelled off. And reminders for the day phase again, healers, this thing's all on you. Stand in the frontal from the boss for the increased mana and extra healing buff. Assign 1 or 2 healers to click on the beacons that spawn for the 1500% healing increase. And then DPS players / tanks bring the large ad into the frontal to help kill it quicker. More importantly, try to line up the death of the large ad, and then when it fractures into the smaller shots that spawn from that, try to line that up with the frontal the boss does. Killing the smaller ads fast is actually more important than killing the large ad quickly. So sometimes it might be useful to hold damage to line up the frontal with killing those smaller ads that do the fear spamming. And that's it. That's the entire fight. This one's not too bad for the boys. It's relatively easy, especially if you have great healers. Great healers will make this fight a joke. Make sure you lock in. Kill the ads as they fixate towards the sunbeam or the boss. Make sure you're in the good frontal, avoid the bad frontal, and just take down this silly dragon. As always, if you have questions, leave them in the comments below. If you have great tips, I actually learned a couple of things in the last video from comments. Leave those in the comments below as well, and I will work on getting the next 2 guides out. Just a heads up, we did not kill Shaw in testing, so I won't have that guide until we clear it when the raid releases, but I will have Lei Shi out here in the next couple of days. Good luck, and I'll see you guys in the next one.